Broadcast video is live. You have your outline there?
Yes, I do.
All right. So do you have any questions?
Mm. I don't think so. I think
Okay.
it's all pretty clear to me.
All right. You remember it's an all ages podcast, so, watch that pirate's tongue, sailor.
I will try.
Okay, cool. Then we'll start in three, two, one. With gamers everywhere receiving the rewards of backing Reaper's recent $1 million+ Bones Kickstarter, there seems to be no better time to discuss making the most of miniatures in your home game. There was a lot of M's in that sentence, and I'm impressed that I got through all of them. Joining me is No Direction contributor and production manager at Reaper Miniatures, Mr. Bryan Stilts.
Hi, how's everybody doing?
Everybody is doing great. I speak for everybody now.
Yes.
I can tell you I'm doing great. How are you doing, Bryan?
I'm pretty tired, but otherwise doing good. Really exciting. Had a really good day on the production floor, so that's got me pretty excited.
What on earth could be making you tired? I don't understand.
Well, you have caught us at I would say the middle of shipping Kickstarter fulfillment on the Bones Kickstarter, but it's not really the middle. We're almost at the end now.
Oh, wow.
Yeah, a little over 3,000 more orders left to go out of 18,000, so we're in the last sixth.
Wow. It's funny. Param kept saying that he was convinced he was going to be the last order shipped. So when I saw he actually got his shipment today, I just assumed that all shipments were done.
No, we did all the American shipments. We finished today. We finished the last Canadian shipment, so you'll be getting yours at some point.
Hopefully.
Well, what we have to finishing it is kind of a little bit misleading. They are on our dock waiting for the UPS guys to send the truck to pick them up. And I don't know if that's going to happen tomorrow or the next day, but it will be within 48 hours. And then they'll have the truck, and then it should just be at that point a matter of probably 5 to 10 days before you get yours. And then tomorrow we start on everybody that's neither United States or Canada. So that's a little over 3,000 of everybody else in the entire rest of the world.
Wow. I know I said it was $1 million+, but how many people backed the Bones Kickstarter?
18,090.
Good God Almighty.
It was a lot, and it came to a. By the time you add in the extra money that people could add in over the course of the Pledge Manager, which was the additional add-on that let you add things after the Kickstarter was over, we made a little over 4 million. So,
A little over how much?
4 million.
4 million. Oh my goodness. Why did I think it was like 1.5 million?
At the Kickstarter itself records 3.4 million, and then we got another slightly more than 500,000 through the Pledge Manager from people going, oh, and I'll add in a little bit of money for one of these and one of those. So,
Wow, excellent. Now,
yeah.
Reaper seemed really prepared for overfunding with all the stretch goals being mapped out and just more and more things being added with high quality pictures or art already there. But did you really have any idea it would go this big?
We had planned out to 4 million, and had I'm going to say there were a couple of errors in calculation along the way, and when we got to that last day, those last stretch goals, those were really the last stretch goals. We could not actually make those last to 4 million and still be able to do what we needed to do. So we ended at pretty much the perfect time, because that was as far as we had material for.
So was the next stretch goal just like, we're done, thank you?
I technically had one more thing in my art bag, one more graphic that I had created, that if we had to go a matter of hours longer past the 3.5 million mark, I had one more item, but that was it. And it was after that, it was going to be like, well, you guys have made it. That's everything we wanted. Sorry, we're done.
Cool. Have you ever revealed what this one more graphic was?
No, I never have.
Will you?
We are talking about the idea of trying this again, and this would be a big reveal for the next campaign, if there is one. Although right now, in the middle of this, I'm not allowing people at work to talk about a new campaign. I'm like, let's finish this one, please.
So what has the last year been like for Reaper?
It's been exciting, and a lot scary, and a lot of changes and new things going on. One of the first things that happened when we got done with the campaign was we realized that the square footage that 7 million plastic miniatures, which is what we ended up having to buy to fulfill our rewards, was going to take up was more square footage than we physically possessed in our factory. So we had to immediately scramble, contact a builder, talk to in our little complex. There were other warehouses available, so we had to rent out a second warehouse. We built an expansion on. We actually built 2 different expansions onto our factory at different times, just to physically hold the product that we would be receiving over the course of this. So that's been exciting. It's been just interesting to deal with that and to see that, because I've never really been with a company that's been doing that kind of growth and expansion on that scale in that short of a time before. The logistics and planning from my side as the production manager has just been extremely intense. There have been a lot of very late nights and a lot of weekends up there poring over spreadsheets and analyzing, going to Ed, who's the CEO of Reaper Miniatures, and with spreadsheets and going, okay, Ed, 7 million miniatures, here's how many man hours it's going to take just to do this next step. And he looks at that and he's like, that's 6 months. We don't have 6 months. Yes. So we need to do something. And all these planning meetings that are not normally a part of what I do. So it's been a very interesting year, very exciting year. I've learned a lot. So it's definitely been a worthwhile endeavor.
A lot of people have been posting when they get their vampire packages that it's like, wow, I didn't expect it to take up this much room. So it's funny to think that obviously you would have had the exact same situation, only on a multiple thousand times larger scale.
Yeah. When they contacted us, the company that we were working with in China to have these manufactured, and I'll need to come back to that point, so remind me. But when they contacted us and they said, okay, well, the basic vampire level box is this big, we immediately sat down and went, okay, we had 25,000 of that box, so what is that cubic footage? And we went, okay, that's half of our entire factory just for the vampire level reward. So it took 5 full-length 18-wheeler trailer containers to hold just the vampire portion of the shipment.
Wow. A lot of people have pointed to the Reaper Bones as like, this is how you do Kickstarters, but obviously there's still areas to learn. So what would you do better next time?
Oh, goodness. There's a lot of things. One of the things I feel like we didn't do very well was clarifying what was in a vampire level as a bonus reward, and what was an additional thing that you could pledge for, an extra $25, an extra $10, or whatever. There was a lot of confusion at the end when we said, well, you can get extras of everything, and everybody went, well, what am I already getting versus what am I adding that I'm not going to get if I don't buy it? So clarifying that, I think, is very important. I think we had a lot of superfluous levels. I think our project probably had 20 different levels that you could pledge in at. And in the end, really, most people went with the vampire level, and there was a very small number, maybe 200 or 300 of people that chose something else. So understanding that we really only need 2 levels. We need vampires, and we need all the other stuff. I don't need a separate level for, I want a t-shirt, and I want a hat. And that's because I'm not in the hat and t-shirt business. So actually, for us, adding a hat and a t-shirt, and we did it because everybody does. When you look at Kickstarter, and for $20 you get a hat, and that's just everywhere. And we thought, well, that's what people expect. That's what we do. And we realized that, no, we want to raise money to make minis and not have to turn around and buy $10,000 worth of hats just because that's what people pledged for. So,
I don't think I got a hat.
most people didn't. The hat was specifically the least popular thing in our entire pledge drive. So
I was very tempted by design your own mini. Multiple times, I was very tempted by it.
I was really surprised that that didn't sell out, because normally that's a high demand item when we do offer it, and it normally, when we do offer it, it sells for quite a bit of money on our site. But
maybe it was just volume versus specialty. People were looking at getting the most of their miniatures instead of getting one really cool miniature just for them.
And I think that's probably the case. Now we did after the fact, after the drive, there were 4 users who we felt their input to us throughout the entire campaign during the 30-day experience that is running a Kickstarter. These people were on 24/7, side by side with us, answering questions. If I logged off at midnight and said, "Okay, guys, I got to get some sleep. I'll be up at 5 in the morning with your updates," for the next 5 hours, these guys would be on answering all the questions that people were asking that we weren't there for. They were creating spreadsheets for the fans, so fans could track their pledges, and doing all this data analysis and emailing us going, "Oh, by the way, there's one guy in particular who had web spiders going out and would turn around and go, 'Discussions about your Kickstarter have opened up on these 7 new forums. You might want to go open accounts and answer questions there.'" And it was just extremely helpful stuff. And those 4 users each were offered a design your own mini from the unsold DYOMs. We gave them to those backers for free because their input to us had been invaluable to the point where we felt like they were members of the team ultimately.
And these were just people that just backed it. They weren't like friends of Reapers or people you knew.
I have since then met exactly one of them in real life, and that was only because they happened to be at a convention I was at.
Wow.
So yeah, I've never met any of them before, and 3 of them I don't even know their real name. I only know their screen name.
Wow.
So.
I always question 'cause on Facebook every now and then people are like, "Oh, the world's terrible. People are all negative. Nothing works out for good people." I just don't see it because I see stories like you're talking about where people are just doing something for the sake of doing something, get rewarded in a way that's I'm sure they were just not expecting and were so flattered to be thought of that way.
Yeah, and my experience is the same. Traveling to conventions, and I hate to say that I think it's part of geek culture, but I think it really is. Our culture tends to be a little bit more inclusive and a little bit more friendly and appreciative, and some of that I think comes from the fact that as geeks as a whole, we were probably victims of being ostracized at some point in our past. So we're more inclusive and more appreciative in general. But I don't mean to put non-geeks down. If you're not a geek and you're listening to this, I'm not trying to be insulting. But there is a negative contingent out there in the world, and you see it. I see it on my Facebook feed and things like that all the time. But I think our industry and our hobby lend themselves to this group of people that just tend to be a little bit less negative in general. So.
Now you mentioned you wanted me to bring up the factory in China.
Yes. So part of our reward structure was that we would acquire, and we have done so, the plastics injection molding machines so that we can begin producing these in-house. And a lot of people got very confused by the fact that we said, well, here's the plastics machine, and we showed pictures of it back in March when it came in. And then they said, okay, so when are we going to get our bones? And we said, well, they haven't come in from China yet. And people were very confused. If we have a plastics machine, why are we still having them made in China? And so here's the story behind that, and it's a bit of a math problem. We had 7 million miniatures we ordered. The factory in China that we work with has 14 of these plastic injection machines, and it took them a grand total of 8 months to produce all of the product we needed. If we had tried to produce that on our one machine, it would have taken us
8 times 14.
8 times 14, and I'm terrible at math. 96 months, is that right?
Yeah, let's go with that.
Yeah, so 9 years?
It would be 140 minus 28. So 118. Now I'm showing how terrible I am at math.
It would be a really large number, greater than 7 or 8 years for us to produce that same volume in-house. So I think it's important for people to understand that we have the machine and we're producing plastic items in-house, but their Kickstarter rewards came from China because there was just, on this scale, no way for us to have done that. So.
Now I have heard of some people that they get quotes before they do a Kickstarter. They Kickstarter funds, and sometimes even funds to the point that it makes Kickstarter news. And then suddenly the quotes that they got escalated because the people who quoted them suddenly realized they've got more funds to burn. Did Reaper have to deal with anything like that?
No, we've had an excellent relationship with this factory since at least 2007 when we started our Legendary Encounters pre-painted miniatures line with them. And I believe we've been getting our bases that we use in our Warlord figures, the square black plastic bases, for longer than that. So, and they're being in China, I don't think they even realized we had a Kickstarter and at all. They just we suddenly sent them several very large boxes of figures and said, okay, we need you to quote these miniatures and make molds of them for us. So I didn't feel like, certainly knowing what I know about the prices of the figures we had done over the past several years versus the prices of the figures in the Kickstarter when they came in, I don't feel like there was any gouging at all.
All right, I'm happy to hear that. I'm also happy to hear that my Reapers are on their way.
Oh, they absolutely are.
Yeah, I am very excited because when miniatures were first introduced to my role-playing hobby, which is back in second edition, it completely changed the game for me. I know people at the time were saying, and even still to a certain degree, they say like, "Oh, miniatures stifle creativity. It's supposed to be theater of the mind. Why are you making it a board game?" But just I remember the first session or one of the first sessions, my friend Ron, who was new to the game, because the miniatures were laid out, he was like, "Okay, well, I want to kick off of this wall and then tumble," and doing all these crazy things that probably with the amount of actions it would take up, he couldn't do in third edition. But he was just saying like, "I want to do this, 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 and this," and the having it laid out let him know that he could do that if he got the rolls right, and he got like an insane string of 20s or 15 plus rolls to let him accomplish that. So like I love how miniatures help you share the creative experience.
They absolutely can spark that imagination that goes, oh, now that I understand the situation, I understand the layout of the battle and the scene that I'm in, my position relative to all these other things. They can give you that. I've seen them detract from the battle as well, and that's especially when the GM gets particularly rulesy and is like, oh no, you put your miniature over there, you're 37 feet away from the boss, and your range is only 35. Haha. You know, um, not everybody's like that. I know our group and the group I play Pathfinder with is I have two groups. So the primary group I play Pathfinder with is made up almost entirely of Reaper Miniatures employees and managers, and you'd be surprised how rarely we actually use the minis in the games. We have never played a game where we didn't have minis, but a lot of times they just sit on our character sheets in front of us and act as a channel for us to go, this is what I look like, this is, I can focus my personality because I'm looking at this representation of me. But sometimes we just do comments in that theater of the mind style unless we feel like there's something that we need the miniatures to help us understand. You know, where is everything in relation to other things? Okay, well, let's break out the mat and show people. So for us, a miniature is definitely just a tool to help us understand a very complex thing. And fights are often a very complex thing.
So you said one of the two groups rarely uses miniatures.
Yeah, my other group, I have a group that meets on Wednesdays, actually, and it is comprised of middle school kids, although they're going to become freshmen in high school when school starts up again in the fall. And I've been teaching them how to play. Like when they came to the table and they were like, yeah, we've heard of like D&D and stuff, but we don't know anything about it. And so I taught them how to play Pathfinder. And we use miniatures in that game for all the combats. And a lot of that is just to help keep the kids grounded in the rules and understanding the rules and understanding the mechanics of the game that they're in. But lately I've been really, really thrilled with them because we're starting to get through entire sessions where there's no major combats, and the kids just take off dialogue and conversations with NPCs and conversations with each other and planning and building. They're taking control of a dungeon right now, and I don't want to give anything away about what they're doing, but they spend so much time planning the traps and the hallways and the spells that they're going to use at different parts of the dungeon, and they just get very excited by that, and I love to watch that kind of thing happen.
Now we don't have middle
They
school in Quebec, so they're about 9, 10-year-old. Sorry, not
um
9, 10, 9th, 10th grade, so like 14, 15-year-old.
yeah, they'll be going into ninth grade this fall. So I'd say that's about 13, 14. Yeah.
Okay, perfect. So that's just slightly younger than I was. So yes, I can completely relate to those kids. I can get exactly how excited they are, and even more so having such a great a great teacher, a great tutor, a great introduction to the game through you.
Thank you. Uh, I've certainly really enjoyed it. I've actually had to take the last couple of weeks off because the Kickstarter fulfillment has been physically demanding and has left me with not a lot of energy to run a game. And what impressed me the most was when I said, "Okay, guys, I'm going to take off this 3 week period, and we're not going to run games." They said, "Well, can we run a game?" So for the last 3 weeks, one of the kids in the group has been GMing a different game entirely. They've made whole new characters, and this kid is running a game for them. And to see them get that excited, be like, "No, we want to keep playing, even if you can't be here." So I feel like I've definitely instilled the love of the hobby in them, and they're
Meanwhile,
always
you were
very
like, "Oh,
excited.
well, there's volunteers that are going to help me in the warehouse. I can cross out."
Um, but what's awesome is when they come in every time, every now and then they'll be like, "Oh, I found a new character for or new mini for my character." One of the kids um, is always combing through the bins of commons of the DD minis and the Pathfinder minis, and he's always bringing in these things. And he uses the pre-painteds, and I don't think there's anything wrong with that at all. Well, he's able to find some stuff that's really really cool and unique because it's nothing I've ever seen before because I'm spending all day looking at Reaper's inventory. So that's always real fun.
I've always been surprised with the high percentage of PC-friendly miniatures versus monsters. I just would assume that there would be more monster minis than, well, maybe not more than PCs, but why is it that PC minis are so much more popular than the monster minis?
The prevailing theory is that there are so many more players than GMs, and even though a player is only going to buy one character at a time, they're going to buy a new character for every campaign they're in. Whereas a GM is going to buy a bunch of goblins, and when they've got their however many goblins they feel like is the most they'll ever need, they're done buying goblins. And the GMs aren't going to keep buying paladins because how many paladins do you really need as NPCs? Maybe a few. I'm not saying it's zero. Um, but like, I don't know, Gen Con is an excellent example. When I go to Gen Con and I'm working there in the booth and people come in and they go, "Okay, I've got a character that's this," it's always players coming into the booth going, "I need a mini that helps me with my character." And the GMs are most of them, they already have their minis. They're getting their minis out of the discount bins or the 25-cent commons. Hopefully now that the bones are about to be released into retail stores, they'll be able to go buy the bones for $2 or $3 each. A nice inexpensive price. Some of the monsters are big. Monsters are complex things. You really want to do them right, and they end up being $14 or $15 in metal. Some of them go up to 50 or $60 for a metal mini. There's a limited number of $20 basilisks I'm going to sell to a GM, even if they need a basilisk, because it's $20 figure. Whereas for a $5 PC, which is what they've been for years, I think our cheapest mini is $7 because the price of tin keeps going up. But a $7 PC, I can sell a lot of those. But $20 basilisk, you're going to think twice about it.
Well, those more expensive minis may be more expensive, but they also tend to have more weight. And I can remember the first time I dropped just a big metal red dragon, just boom, on the table. The weight made it more impressive.
Well, that's also true. Although when you get your Caladrax, I think he weighs 4. Let me think. Trying to do the math here. I think he weighs about 4 pounds, so 2.5 kilos just for Caladrax.
Of plastic?
Yes.
Wow.
The Caladrax weighs as much as your Vampire Reward in its entirety by himself.
Wow. Cool. All
So
right. I was afraid I would have to put weights or something at the bottom to have that same thud, but no.
No, you plop him on the table and everybody will hear it hit.
You talked about that people need minis for their PCs, but at the Reaper Paint and Take a couple of years ago, I painted up a dwarf in a kilt with a bagpipe, and now I feel like I need a PC for that cool miniature.
Yeah, it works that way a lot. I know a lot of the characters I create for the Thursday night game that I play in. Um, a lot of my characters are based on, like, we just got a brand new sculpt from Bobby Jackson and it's really awesome, so I need to play this mini. And what's sad is I'll show up at the game and, two of the other guys at the table are like, I just got this brand new mini Kevin made. Oh crap, we all got the same mini. So yeah, that happens to us a lot too, where the miniature inspires the figure or the character as often as the character demands or dictates what miniature you're going to end up using.
One of the cool things about miniatures is that on top of being miniatures and being cool and being tokens, is that there's the hobby within the role-playing hobby, which is the miniatures hobby, the painting, the customizing.
Yeah. I myself am very much into conversions and customization. It is very rare when I'll plop a figure on the table that hasn't had something custom done to it. But the painting is a huge part of the hobby. I find far more people are into painting than the customizing, to be honest. And customizing scares people. It's very intimidating because if you do it wrong, you've destroyed what could potentially be anywhere from a $5 to a $100 miniature. But there are countless hours. I go to Paint Club on Saturdays, which is something we have up at the storefront that's attached to the Reaper factory. And you've got dozens of people sitting down every week painting their miniatures together, and it's a very social experience. There's so much we can learn from each other in that painting, and that's one of the reasons why I like to do the mini updates, is because I've learned a lot, and I'm a pretty mediocre painter when you get right down to it. My wife says that I'm pretty good, but I think she's just playing to her audience. And but there's a lot that I've learned, and I'm not very good at putting it into practice, but I've learned techniques and tips, and I understand things about how to put it together. I just need a little more practice doing it. And tying it back a little bit into the Bones Kickstarter, one of the most incredible things we've seen as a company is that our paint line sales have shot up tremendously ever since the Kickstarter started. And we think this is people getting paint, practicing painting, getting ready because they know they're going to get this big old box of unpainted minis and they want to be able to do something cool with it. So I'm excited. I'm grateful as a GM and player that we've managed to give so many people a tool that they'll be able to use in their games. But beyond that, we've helped bring so many more people into the hobby. And I think what we're going to end up seeing is a whole new crowd of incredible painters out there teaching and learning and discovering new techniques and new abilities. So what we'll be seeing on our Facebook profile soon will be pictures of, oh my God, look at this, I did this really cool thing. And a whole new flock of master painters will emerge.
Well, and people will have minis to spare with all their vampire minis lying around.
And it doesn't hurt that at $2 a mini for a lot of the character figures, if you screw it up, it was a $2 mini, and you can try again. A little bit of Simple Green as a cleaning agent. I don't know, readily available all over the world, but it's readily available around here. Pine Sol, things like that. Soak them in that for 24 hours, scrub off the paint with a toothbrush, and start again. And it was only, it's a $2 investment to find out whether or not you're going to enjoy painting.
I've really enjoyed the mini updates you've been given. I've been trying to apply the tips as well as using the Reaper paint, the HD paint that you sent me, which very much appreciated. I still feel like I've only got a certain level of painting ability, but a recent miniature I did was for Valter, my Lore Warden fighter with the Ripsaw Glaive. Well, you still don't have a Ripsaw Glaive miniature.
No, we don't have a Ripsaw Glaive.
No, so even though I think it's a decent paint job, but it gets a lot more attention because I also customized it. And the bones, the plastic bones, I think are going to be that much easier to customize.
They are. We had we've been doing ReaperCon for, oh good lord, 10 years now. And out of those 10 years, I've done 3 conversions classes. And the first 2 I ever did were converting and using the metal miniatures as a basis. And we were lucky if by the end of the 2-hour time slot of the class, we were done with the one conversion and had covered all the salient techniques that the people in the class had wanted to learn. we took this year. I did a bones conversion class, and I had a vampire box because we had them in time for ReaperCon. We tore open a vampire box, and I think we all made 9 different miniatures, and then there was a collective miniature that we passed around, and everybody experimented with a technique and did something different to that one mini, which came out to be quite a horrible abomination, but it was fun.
So what you said earlier about how the painting hobbyists outnumber the customizing hobbyists, I believe we will see a shift towards a much larger contingent of customizers now that it's that much easier to customize.
I think it's likely, certainly. Once you discover how easy it is to take a sword from one mini and replace it to the axe of another, and that's the most basic conversion and customization that you can possibly do, is swap weapons out. And on a metal miniature, it takes quite a bit of specialized tools and quite a bit of planning to clip that weapon off, drill the holes you need to drill, clip it, attach the next one properly. On the plastic figures, get an X-Acto knife or a sharp hobby knife, cut that off, drop some super glue, glue it on. Real easy.
Yeah, Valter started out as Damiel the Alchemist, who's included in the bones, but I had to buy a metal one because I needed it earlier.
Right.
And I just was cursing, like, I know I'm getting a plastic version of this. Why am I, like, sawing for 20 minutes through this wrist? I had plans to, like, cut him at the waist, replace his legs with something a little more mobile than the long coat. But by the time I was just done getting his arms prepared, I was like, that's it. I've customized enough.
What did you use for the weapon? How did you replicate a ripsaw glaive?
Okay, so the weapon is a series of pole arms with their heads cut off, and then applied to a mace. So the mace looks kind of cog-like, and so by putting the different pole arm heads into the different spaces of the mace, it looks like it's got some kind of rotary blade. And then I just had a rope from an equipment pack that's added as the ripcord, and Damiel comes, he's holding a bomb or like an extract, whatever. So that looks like the handle of the ripcord that's then attached to the side of the ripsaw glaive.
Well, that's brilliant. That's great.
Cool, thank you. I'll probably do a Valter Take 2 when I get the plastic miniature in and go all out.
The only thing that's going to give you problems there is there's no reasonable proxy for a rope without going either back to the metal or to, like, I don't know, brass wire or something. I don't have anything in the bones line that's going to go, here, I can clip this off, and that's going to be the rope.
All right, well, I don't want to destroy my original mini, so he's going to keep that rope, but I'll buy another accessory pack because those are easier to clip through than, like, the waist of a metal miniature.
Yeah. Well, and the accessory packs and weapons packs and things are designed to be used for the customization, so that they're something that you don't have to destroy, you can use. So that's nice.
Now, there's one part of the hobby I've never really been into. Well, okay, I've never participated in, but I enjoy looking over other people's creativities, and that's dioramas.
I tried to make a diorama once.
How'd that go? It was so perfect you never wanted to do another?
That's what, yes, it was so perfect I never wanted to do another. Dioramas are great at telling a very particular story, and now I love terrain making. I like making hills and mountains and trees and little buildings and things like that. I have a lot of fun making those kind of things. I don't have space in my house for the tools and the equipment, and I can only keep a limited number of them, and the rest of them I have to, here, you like this, you can keep it when you leave tonight's game, kind of thing, to the kids. But that's a lot of fun, and the conversions and the setting it up. But in general, I think dioramas generally tell a very specific story. A diorama of a paladin fighting a dragon, that's the one I made, for example. And I have no ability in a D&D game or in a Pathfinder game to plop that diorama down, and I still have it, but I can't plop it down in the middle of the game and go, well, here's this paladin fighting a dragon, because they're fused to the base and they're on the hill they're on, and how you can't use that in combat. The paladin can't go anywhere, the dragon can't go anywhere, they're stuck eternally. I did it for a competition. I was pleased with the results, but I don't feel I'm much more into the gaming aspect of the hobby, the customizing that. um, and where I tremendous respect and props to the people who are able to do these brilliant dioramas. They don't suit what my personal needs for my miniatures are. So it's not something that I'm inclined to just continue to try.
I'm going to do a little Easter egg for anyone that finds the video. This is going to be cut out of the audio part of the podcast, but by coincidence, I've got a couple of items just sitting here next to my computer that may look like just trash, but the idea is I will eventually paint this Pringles tube and this plastic doodad with textured paint, and it will go next to the Terradrome, beside the or above the missile silo or the missile launcher, and it will be the missile silo. But the thing is that I have had this next to my desk in the planning phases for about 6 months, maybe a year. So the thing that worries me about terrain is that when I see like an interesting piece of packaging or whatever, I hold on to it, and at some point I'm just hoarding garbage if I don't start painting these things.
It's so true. I have boxes and boxes of things that anybody else would walk into my house and assume were garbage, and I'm like, no, that's going to be a fort, I promise. Eventually.
Don't you see its potential?
Yes,
You're just seeing a marble slab. I see David.
Exactly.
One of the cool things about making terrain and using smaller scale terrain, miniature terrain, is that as opposed to using a pre-painted battle map where you feel like you've got to move around like a chair is an obstacle, whereas if you have the miniature, suddenly a chair becomes a weapon. A chair becomes something that you can kick in front of your opponent, and you can actually move the chair, manipulate all the things in your environment.
Mm-hmm. That's I think Dwarven Forge does a really good job of that. We use a lot of their accessories in our game because they have the barrels and the crates and those things, and their most recent Kickstarter, I believe, a lot of that stuff is going to be available in a plastic format now, so it's going to be mostly affordable. But I find that having that kind of thing on the table really does help. It also helps with things like line of sight. I'm ducking behind these barrels. Can he still see me? Well, I get a rough idea how big those barrels are. You run the risk the more that you add that you start to play the tabletop war game that is the battle scene in front of you.
Or Fantasy Dollhouse.
Or Fantasy Dollhouse. But there's so much... so many good accessories out there if you know what you want, and I feel that's something that definitely never allowed to talk bad about Reaper. But I feel like it's something that our company has not represented as well as we could, is that kind of accessory. We don't really have a good selection of barrels and crates and chairs and tables and the kinds of things that are going to come up fairly often in your scenery needs. But if you can find them, Hearst Arts has good molds of them. Dwarven Forge makes a lot of those things, and I know there are companies that are going to be really mad that I didn't name them. That's what they're making. There's sources for those out there, and if you can get them, I say totally get your hands on those things, because once you start using miniatures in your game, if you start using 3D terrain of any kind, and they work just as well with the Paizo flip mat, which we use a lot of in our games. Once you start going into that third dimension, you find that on a flat table, if your PCs and monsters are the only things standing above the surface of the table, extruding into that third dimension, you lose something. But as soon as you start adding in other things that also bring the world up off the surface of the table, even if only by an inch, it just adds so much more realism.
Well, we're going to put a pin in that because I can see having a whole episode on 3D terrain and using terrain like that. But before I let you go, Bryan, is there anything else you would like to talk about miniatures hobby, or anything on your mind?
I think I've covered most things.
All right, then where can people find out more about you or Reaper Miniatures?
If you want to find out more about minis, check us out at reapermini.com. We have forums at .com/forum. We have a craft section where we have articles about painting, converting, customizing your miniatures, building dioramas, putting lights in your miniatures, and
cool.
Anything you can think of at reapermini.com/thecraft, all one word, the craft. Yeah, check us out at reapermini.com. We've got a vibrant, active community, and we'd love to see you and help you get more into the hobby.
And afterwards, you can share your thoughts on miniatures and on this episode at the forums at 35privatesanctuary.com by clicking the forums link at the top of the page, registering if you haven't already, finding the thread for episode 224, Maximizing Your Miniatures. We'll be right back. Oh, sorry. Thanks for joining us, Bryan, and we'll be right back with 3.5 minutes.
All right.
So I'll end the broadcast, but that won't end the hangout.